Okay, I want to welcome our Pit Nug members. This is our technically 15-minute webinar. Sometimes they go a little longer than that, so we'll be wrapped up by 12:30. The title of this webinar is NetSuite Supply and Demand Planning. Jordan Curry, our very own Grossman Yanak Ford Senior Manager, is doing the presentation, and Jordan, go ahead, take over. I'll be muted on the side if you need me.
All right, good deal. Thanks, Rhonda. Well, again, thank you everybody for joining this webinar today on a Friday. Kudos for joining it on a Friday. I hope you get some value out of it. So the agenda today is we're going to go over supply and demand planning in NetSuite and getting started. So what I'd like to go through is some basic understanding of the demand and supply planning features, explore NetSuite demand planning. We'll go through supply planning options, pros and cons of each planning option, because there's multiple different planning options. Some of them conflict a little bit with the preferences, so we'll go through that. And then from my view, the best practices with getting started with planning in NetSuite. Some of you might be just getting on NetSuite and looking to get started with demand planning. I know when you're doing an implementation, sometimes that's something that gets pushed to a phase 2, or you've already been on NetSuite for a while and then you're starting to utilize it. So I would encourage you to do so, because as we'll discuss, NetSuite has made some improvements in this area. So firstly, we're going to go through, I put this together. I should have put the NetSuite safe harbor statement on there. So I did put this together, but this is kind of the overarching, the features for demand and supply planning that you should be aware of. So with demand planning, so obviously I consider it different levels. Okay, so you have reorder point, which is the most basic level, time phased, and then MRP. Okay, so obviously with reorder point, you could see the features. Really, there's not really a whole bunch of features associated with reorder point other than you just basically fill out the reorder point. Stock falls below the reorder point, it shows up on the order items page. Okay. One clear distinction that really throws a lot of people. Fun fact, it actually threw NetSuite support way back when. This distribution resource planning does not work with MRP. So that's just an important feature to know. For people that have multiple inventory locations. So if you're going to be doing time phased, you're going to want to use distribution resource planning. If you're going to be using MRP, that's where the planning item rule groups comes in. That's one of those features that, it doesn't really scream it at you. I wish it did. That this feature is for time phased, the distribution resource planning, whereas that is not for MRP. So you can see all of the other features. MRP does require that you use advanced bill of materials. So if you're somebody that has been on NetSuite for a while and you haven't transitioned to advanced bill of materials yet, you'll need to do that if you want to use MRP. Okay. Now, a lot of people that are just joining NetSuite are new to NetSuite from a manufacturing side. You likely already have advanced bill of materials on, so you don't know, what it's like without it on. Okay, so just so you know. Okay, so moving forward here. So overview of the methods of actually getting the demand. Okay, and the forecasted demand, I like to distinguish between demand and forecasted demand. So the demand plan, the forecasted demand. So the methods of getting that in the system. So you can calculate your item demand plans. And you see the methods that you can use to do that. A lot of favorite, a favorite one of mine is the sales forecast, using, the data that you have entered in the system to kind of anticipate and calculate that future demand. But a lot of times, even if people calculate the item demand plan, they still manually then manipulate it based on what they believe their forecast is. And then obviously you can use a CSV import. And a lot of people, particularly when you're starting out on NetSuite, choose to just use the CSV import. Fun fact, that's actually a great way to develop your your direct budget per se. So your sales revenues and your direct expenses, your cost of goods sold, you can tie that in directly with your forecasted demand. People have done that and had some success. Pretty cool way of doing it. So moving on, we got the actual demand. Okay, so this is kind of obvious, but I just wanted to point it out. Particularly, this is important for time phased and MRP. Okay, so the types of demand, everybody just thinks of orders, sales orders, but also on a location by location basis, transfer orders trigger demand. Work orders trigger demand for the lower level components. And then safety stock actually triggers demand as well. So if you're using MRP, and you kind of like the functionality of like reorder point, a lot of people use safety stock as basically a way to use that reorder point in MRP. Okay. So basically, if your inventory falls below or is anticipated to fall below your safety stock level, that triggers additional demand to get you back to that safety stock level. So another big thing is for these planning tools, you want to watch for negative inventory because negative inventory will cause a little bit of confusion when you're planning, because it will try to get it back to a zero quantity. So if that's happening, a lot of times it's a difference between the inventory detail and the actual inventory quantity that happens if you have like a WMS integration or sometimes it happens with RF Smart, etc. So just watch out for that. Okay, so again, overview of the planning methods. We got reorder point, time phased, and material resource planning. So there's some other very helpful tools. Again, if you're using NetSuite, these are generally free tools that you can download through the Suite apps. So we got this in supply chain snapshot. That is actually an enable feature. Okay, so that works with basically whatever planning method that you choose. Okay, so whatever planning method you choose, the supply chain snapshot pulls that in onto the item. It's cool if you're running what if simulations where you say, okay, what happens if we get this big order, and then you can fill out that simulation, run it, and it'll calculate what happens to the inventory if you do get that order. So it can kind of help you plan for those different scenarios. Additionally, you have the Item 360 report, which is a very nice consolidated view of inventory, purchasing, manufacturing, and sales data, kind of consolidating and putting all that information in one place. The control tower, that's a nice overall view. Okay. Item 360 is more, kind of item specific, not looking at all the items. If you want to drill into one item, that's Item 360 is good for that. The control tower is, across all of your planning orders, looking for late work orders, late purchase orders, late sales orders, things of that nature. The Supply 360 is a newer suite app, really focused on manufacturing, looking for work orders that are out there or planned work orders that have material shortages that you need to address. So specific for manufacturing, but you can filter by location and other parameters. So again, I encourage you to, and again, it really doesn't hurt anything putting these bundles and turning these features on. So I would encourage you to do so. Additionally, you have the Vendor 360. That's nice for monitoring vendor performance. So if you want to, have a consolidated view of, your different vendors and how they're performing in terms of when the shipment was requested, when they delivered it, that's a very nice tool as well. So again, if you're using native NetSuite, you don't have a lot of customization. These are all great tools that, again, are just offered as part of your subscription. So I would encourage you to take advantage of them. Okay, so next I'm going to go through some pros and cons of each planning method. Okay, so with reorder point planning, the pro is what I like about it. If anybody knows me, I like simple. It's very simple, very easy to use. So again, stock falls below what you have set up on the reorder point, it triggers to reorder it. You can have a reorder multiple. So again, if you want to only order in quantities of, let's say, 100, then if it falls below, it'll trigger to order 100. Okay, which might put you a little above. But pro of it, it's very simple, easy to use. So people like that. And again, for a dashboard view, you can use those other, the Supply 360, the Item 360, the simulations to start, looking at from a dashboard perspective. Cons, reorder point doesn't really give you a lot of forward-looking inventory planning. It's pretty, it falls below, you order it. Doesn't really anticipate very well when it's going to fall below. Okay, so that's kind of a con. It's not very robust reorder point, very simple. So again, you can consider some of your items, let's say you have MRO inventory versus direct production inventory. Some of your items you can configure under reorder point, while others you want to configure under MRP. People do that as well. So moving on to time phased. Now, time phased is that starts to begin to consider forward-looking demand. So that's your forecasted demand that you have either manually uploaded based on your sales forecast or have imported into the system. Also considers obviously your on-hand inventory at the locations and all of the orders that you have out there. The cons that I found with time phased is doesn't have a great centralized repository to kind of view the information. So you're, obviously you can use those dashboards that I talked about earlier, those bundles to kind of view the information. You can use safe searches and reports to view the information. And then obviously the order items page as well. You can view that. It will, all the suggestions that it has will pop up on that page. Okay. But doesn't really doesn't pull it all together very well. And that's really where they made some improvements with material resource planning, which is what we'll talk about next. So again, material resource planning considers forward-looking demand, okay, just same as time phased, on-hand inventory, current orders, significantly improved visibility and traceability. So you have the planning dashboard, okay, so the dashboard, we'll maybe take a quick look here at the end of the planning dashboard. It has a process to link orders to the demand. That's what it's termed pegging. It pegs the supply orders to the actual demand. So you can look at it from a top-down approach or from the bottom up to the demand. So from the demand side down to how it's going to be supplied, or from the supplied side down to where it's coming from. So that's a very nice feature that was added, because again, that's with the time phase, that's what a lot of people were wondering. Okay. The cons of it is there are a lot of fields on the item to get familiar with. There is a lot of different methods that you can use that will dramatically affect the results you get from a supply planning perspective. So it's important, what I always tell people, start out simple. Don't get too complex with those parameters from the start. You know, just run it as is, set maybe your default preferences, run it as is, and then manipulate from there. Okay. GYF, we have a dictionary of those fields that you can go through, and it kind of explains each of those fields and what they're used for. Additionally, something to know is, not like example, reorder point, that reorder point field on an item is used with reorder point. MRP doesn't use that, time phase doesn't use that. That is for reorder point. Okay, so just something to know, something to, know as you're getting in there, just it doesn't use that. Now you can still fill that out and have it for reporting, but it's not going to use that from a MRP perspective. Okay. Okay. Another con, again, I look at this as a pro plus a con, but with MRP, it's really important to manage your purchase orders, manage your sales orders in terms of the expected ship date or the expected receipt date. Also your work orders, also your transfer orders. Because if you do not, there is a look back period that you can set up on an item perspective, on an item location. That's one of those fields on the item location listing, where you could say, I want to look back for 30 days. Okay, you can default that. But once it drops past that 30 days, if it's still an open, let's say, purchase order, it's going to drop out of MRP. So that's why it's very critical with MRP to manage your, purchase orders, manage your sales orders, which again, I say this is a little bit of a pro, because you should do that anyways. All of your sales orders, all of your purchase orders, all of your work orders, all of your transfer orders, if they're not fully received, fully built, closed out, it's important to close those orders out if they're no longer valid, because technically NetSuite is viewing that as an open planning order. So it will cause more confusion if it's no longer valid. So you want to make sure you're managing that. One complaint, I've had, to be frank, about the material resource planning dashboard is it does lack, the ability for any customization, maybe that you're familiar with, like a Save Search or other, list views in NetSuite. Doesn't have those similar capabilities. It is getting more flexible. I've seen more and more releases where they're adding different filtering capabilities and things, but it is, you can't do a great deal of customization to that dashboard. So again, just talking about overall best practices, my suggestions and getting started with demand and supply planning, again, is start simple. 9 times out of 10, I would import your demand initially. I would just plan on that. Import your demand based on your sales forecast. If you do calculate it, you're likely going to need to update it based on your expectations, and you can do that. You can export it out and then update it. Again, avoid falling into the trap of overcomplication. Don't get too complex with the item parameters too quickly. Get familiar with the item parameters, which ones work with what module, okay? Whether that's reorder point, time phased, or MRP. So when you're selecting which one to use, so if you're new to NetSuite, if you're just on NetSuite, you have assembly items, you have advanced bill of materials, and you have MRP, okay, as a feature that you can turn on. Generally, you're going to choose either between reorder point or MRP. You don't even want to consider time phased. Okay. So if you're just getting on NetSuite, you don't even want to really consider time phase. It's either going to be reorder point or material requirements planning. Okay. The reason is because material requirements planning is kind of the updated version of demand and supply planning. So if you start out with time phased, it's kind of, they're not, I expect they would depreciate that in the future. It's not going to be, there's not going to be a lot of enhancements to it. All the enhancements are going to be at MRP at this point. So I wouldn't even consider time phased. The only situation that you might want to consider time phased is if you are a legacy NetSuite customer. You don't have advanced bill of materials turned on, but you still want forward-looking demand planning capability. Then you can consider time-phased inventory planning. Obviously, I would consider turning advanced bill of materials on. But if for whatever reason you have customizations, things that you don't want to turn it on, you like the historical version of that, then you can consider time-phased inventory planning for that forward-looking planning. And again, just a reminder, all systems are just tools. You still need to develop, solid business processes around them to have success with this. And again, MRP is a tool. I encourage people to start using it, start building that into their process sooner rather than later. From an implementation standpoint, MRP is not hard to implement. It's hard to implement into your process. But again, that's where we encourage people to start using it, start utilizing it. Even if you don't have the demand, the forward-looking demand, you can just use it on your current orders. And again, that was another benefit of MRP is you can have multiple different views, multiple different scopes as well. So that's something that really time phase doesn't have, that MRP has. You can have multiple different views. So example, you can have a view of your, 3 months ahead demand, but then you can have another view of just, here are my current orders that I need to make sure we get out the door. So again, just wanted to give some high level ideas as you guys get started, some best practices. Appreciate everybody joining. I will quickly just pulls together the information a lot better. We can drill into demand, and this is what it's talking about with pegging. So with pegging, we can drill down and see, okay, it's starting from the top level at this point is safety stock. That's the demand. Okay. And then, okay, how are we going to fulfill that? Okay. So again, you can filter by, different types of demand here, actual orders, sales orders, actual demand, or forecasted demand. Then you can also return and look from the supply side as well. So again, if you want to take the, you want to look from the supply orders and figure out, okay, where is this coming from? You can also look at, okay, here's my quantity of inventory on hand. There's no demand for that one, of course, but drill down and see, okay, here's what orders we're going to fulfill with that quantity on hand. Here's the order items page. If nobody's familiar with that, you can see the different levels. So if you're time phase, you're going to use this. Reorder point, you're going to use this. Planned orders, you're going to use this section. That's MRP. Okay, here's the supply 360. Okay, so again, pulls up different alerts based on your work orders. Okay, based on the date range that you have selected, pulls in shortages and basically, problems that you need to address. Here's the item 360. Okay, so you see we need to filter by an item. Okay, so we can filter by an assembly item here. Then it will refresh, and then we can drill into, okay, what's the inventory look like for that item? What's the purchasing side look like? Manufacturing as well. So you can drill into each of those different areas. Here's the control tower dashboard. Again, this is like a nice overarching dashboard for people in inventory SIOP planning. So you can see, again, problem areas that need to be addressed. And then, again, here's the supply chain snapshots that you can run different views of the information. Sorry. Different simulations. So again, with those simulations, in the system, it goes and calculates what's going to happen with the inventory. So then you can view that. You can schedule those to run. And then here's the vendor performance. So you can see again here, number of orders. And just basically different indicators about how different vendors are performing. So, okay, so I just, again, wasn't going to get too deep into actually, just wanted to talk about the best practices and getting started. But I will open up now for questions.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Oh, we got one. Jeff?
No, we didn't have a question.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
Thank you there.
I'm not going to call you out now. And it's typical we don't have questions, but if you decide later or after, going through it, you have a question, you could always shoot an email to either the contact, me, Rhonda Rother, Jordan, any of us will get you the answers for any questions. Thank you, Jordan, for doing this. We appreciate that. Oh, wait, do we have a question? I thought I heard someone. I will post the recording next week. We'll send out the presentation. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything else, we'll wrap it up. Last chance. Nope. Okay. Well, thanks, Jordan, and have a great afternoon, everyone. Have a good weekend, and look for some info next week.
Yep.
You too.
Buddy.
Yeah,
Thanks for your
Thanks,
time. Appreciate
bye.
it. Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.